Hey, San Antonio, my name is Manny Pelaez. I'm your city council member for District 8. And today we're going to be discussing ad valorem taxes, or valuations as we call them, and talking about your rights as a taxpayer, and talking about how these taxes are calculated, and answering some questions. And so from the outset, I just want to let you guys know I was floored and angry and disappointed at the love letter I got from the Bexar County Appraisal District this week. And I know that many of you felt the same way. And I know that because I've been getting a lot of calls from you guys saying, Councilman, you raised my taxes. And, we tell folks, no, we didn't raise your taxes. But, it's that the valuations went up and they said, whatever, I still have to pay, a lot more. And they're not wrong. And I'm not wrong. I'm going to end up paying a lot more. So I understand the frustration. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. But I thought I'd bring you some valuable information and provide you all some tools that you can use as you navigate this process if you want to protest. And so from the outset, I'll tell you, please protest your taxes. If you don't protest them, then you pay 100%. If you do protest them, then you have a very, very good chance of reducing that burden, okay? So today, I'm joined by two friends of mine, Gary Rivas and Jurica. They are probably the most preeminent experts in San Antonio as far as protesting your ad valorem valuations. And today they are working over at SWBC, and these guys handle thousands and thousands and thousands of cases every single year. Now, what's interesting about this is that you guys have also, every year for the past 5 years, you've joined me in providing this seminar, if you will, to my homeowners. And we're going to go through a PowerPoint presentation that you guys have prepared that I think is very useful. But before we do that, Gary, you want to add anything to the comments? Did you guys also get your big nasty tax bill?
Yes, I was shocked as well. We're pretty much seeing on average 40% increases across the state. Wow. So it's not just in Bexar County, but yeah, it's pretty shocking, and we plan to be awful busy this year.
Yeah. Now, people call me and they're mad, and with every reason to be, right? Because they get sticker shock, right? And it costs a lot to live in anywhere in Texas right now. But nobody needs the government piling on. What are you telling them about why this is happening? And and do your customers understand after they tell you, or do they stay just as mad?
Well, with Texas putting such a high reliance on property taxes to fund local and state governments, the money, they've got to find it somewhere. And, this is a mechanism that Texas uses to generate that revenue. Yeah. That said, man, it really hurts, your pocketbook, for the average property owner, because, because the values are based on, or taxes rather, are based on the market value of your property. Wow, when your taxes go up, your property house payments go up, insurance goes, everything goes up in that, your monthly payments. Once mortgage companies catch up to the explosion of new taxes, right? Man, you really feel that in your pocketbook. So we get it, we understand. I myself had, I think, a close to a 28% increase in my valuation. They're supposed to be based off market value conditions within your area, but with the system that we have, appraisal is done from a mass appraisal concept. The appraisal district does not have the ability to perform individual appraisals on each and every property. So it is up to the property owner to file that protest every year, to tell them, the individual characteristics that apply to your property that they may not be aware of, such as I've got a leaky roof, I've got a shifting slab that has cracks all over my house, and things of that nature that they cannot tell from the outside. So, Councilman, just like you said, you've got to protest each and every year to keep that valuation down, plus to keep your cap valuation down as well. We'll get into that a little bit.
And fellas, I'd heard somewhere, and maybe you can verify this for me, that the average median cost of a home rose dramatically to something like $340,000 plus just in San Antonio. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, very much. Very much. It's a lot of that are people from outside the state coming in with housing in other states is extremely expensive, but they've got a lot of expendable income that they can pour into properties here that, in my opinion, create almost a second market. You have your local market where we're used to conditions like any other year, but when you have these outside buyers coming in with different economics, it almost creates an entirely separate market condition. But nevertheless, we all play in the same pool. So if the sale next door of the house to the guy from California does have an effect on your property value.
Right. And what you're describing is I mean, from what I understand, you sell a single 1-bedroom apartment in San Diego or San Francisco for $1.5 million, and you can bring that $1.5 million to San Antonio and pretty much buy a mansion. And they're doing that in droves, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I also read today that, even though we feel that San Antonio's market is just out of whack and unreasonable and just too expensive, I read today that Austin's number isn't 340,000 plus, it's 600,000 plus right now, which is astonishing. And so I get it. It's painful. So listen, you guys prepared a really good presentation for us, and I say we start it now, and then at the tail end of this presentation, I got some additional questions for you. So this, I'm gonna share it, and I'll run the slideshow. Okay, and if you guys can see it. Is it working?
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Well then, fellas, take it away.
Thank you, Councilman. As you said earlier, I think many, if not most of us, are going through sticker shock in these value notices that the appraisal district sent, and wondering, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on? We're seeing, like we said, anywhere from 30 to 40% increases in value year over year. But I did want to point out on that value notice, take a closer look at it. You've got to, once you get back in your chair or get off the floor and get back to looking at your notice, look at it very carefully, because something to look for is, does your property enjoy a capped value? Okay. That capped value is should be different than the market value that the appraisal comes in at. So that's predicated off the last time the property was appraised, and they can go a maximum of 3 years. So if you never protested, they can only institute a 30% increase year over year.
Yeah, the terminology on your notice will be appraised and assessed. And so let's say they say your house is worth $1 million and it was 100,000 last year. They can only tax you legally 10% higher than the previous year. So your assessed value in that scenario would be 110,000, whereas the appraised would be $1 million. So it's important to remember that you're only paying taxes on the assessed value. And this year, like any other, the cap values, I mean, there's $400,000 or $500,000 cap differences on these homes, right? Just because they've raised them so much. And so that kind of puts the homeowner in, it may not be worth it in some scenarios to protest, because all that value reduction you might get might be above the cap. And so if you're assessed at 110 and appraised at, say, 400,000, you could go in and get $100,000 reduction and not save any tax money this year. But we always recommend, like we said at the start of the presentation, you want to protest every year to keep that baseline low, because eventually you're going to start reaping those savings. But in the years where the increases are so large that we're seeing this year, you're going to see a lot of difference between assessed and appraised.
Right. So by protesting every year, you are limiting the assessed value to a maximum of 10%. So even if you protest and you get nothing off, you're still limiting the following year's assessed value by only a 10% increase. Even if the market
simply put, fellas, simply put, I mean, if you're not protesting your taxes, even if you don't get the discount, you're eventually going to be leaving money on the table, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
All right. Well, listen,
Okay.
January 1st, why is that an important date?
Yeah, so that's the date where the appraisal district is appraising your house. And it's an important date because let's say if you have improvements that are done in December, well, that's not going to help your case because they're appraising it as of January 1st each year. And so improvements in December will obviously make your house more valuable. But if you have improvements or repairs done after January 1st, then it will help your case because the thought is that if you had to fix it now, then as of January 1st, that issue that needed repair probably existed on January 1st.
Mhm.
And so the appraisal district is trying to appraise your property at what it would sell for on January 1st of every year.
Got it.
Then the next slide. So this year, every year, the deadline to file your protest is May 15th. May 15th falls on a Sunday, so that'll push the deadline this year to May 16th. But it's important to know that you have to file your protest before May 15th this year, May 16th.
I would note if anybody, the simplest way to file that protest is doing it through the online system with their appraisal. However, some people still like to mail in their notice. Don't wait for the last day to do that because the postage may not, actually be postmarked
Right.
until May the 16th, and that can get you in trouble. So if anybody who wants to protest by mail, we strongly recommend doing that well in advance of the May 16th deadline.
And there's two main categories that you want to protest. And it's real important you check both. One is, of course, market value, what your house would sell for on January 1st. And the other is unequal with others. A term we use is equity, making sure that your property is appraised fairly amongst your neighbors. And those are going to be two boxes. One's going to be market and one's going to be unequal with others. It's real important to check both boxes on your protest because if you don't, they'll only hear one category.
Got
I
it.
guess while you're talking about checking boxes, why don't you talk about the comparables, a copy of their data set.
Oh yeah, and then also on the protest, you can request their evidence. And of course, that's very important to do. That you'll be able to get their market grids and equity grids sent to you if you check that box. So that's another real important box to check on the protest. I would say besides your protest letter itself, those are the three boxes that you want to check. Make sure those are checked.
All right. So protest box. One of the boxes is show me your evidence. I want to see your comparables. Number two is the equity, right? You're assessing mine higher than you are my neighbors. And the third one, remind me again,
is the market value.
That's right. You guys got the market value wrong. Therefore, it should be reduced. Okay, got it. Next slide. Let's see here. Ooh, that's a lot of words.
This kind of encapsulates the whole process. At the top, we kind of have the calendar. Of course, April, May is when the notices are coming out. If you haven't received your notice, you should fairly soon. May 15th is the deadline. And June is when the informal and formal hearings are held. And so we kind of just walk you through the whole process with this slide. I would say the vast majority of protests are settled at the informal level. And so what you want to provide to the appraiser, once you file your protest, you'll get scheduled for an informal hearing and a formal hearing. And like I said, most hearings are settled at the informal level. So you want to be able to submit to the appraisal district. And the reason why in the past, they were always face-to-face, but with COVID the last couple of years,
right,
they've gotten away from a lot of face-to-face. So the majority this year is still going to be telephone and email. But in that first submittal of evidence, it's important that you have, if your square footage is off, you want to check that. That's like the first thing. If your description of your house is off, you want to check that. If you have any recent appraisals, refi appraisals that help, you want to submit those, and any pictures of issues with the house, damages, all those want to be presented at the informal hearing. Outside of just that, raw evidence that the homeowner would know about, you may want to reach out to your realtor and get some comparable sales. because in the evidence that the district will send you, they'll have two grids. One will be a market, the sales that have happened in your neighborhood within the last year, and the other will be kind of a comparable grid with your neighbors, similar size, similar age. And so it would be a good idea to maybe reach out to your realtor and get some of that data. And so after the informal meeting is held, like I said, hopefully you get an offer that you're happy with. But if not, then it goes to what they call a formal hearing. The ARB is an appraisal review board, and those hearings are they use the term formal, but it has nothing to do with how you dress or anything. It's basically you're going to get 15 minutes in front of 3 panel members that are separate from the appraisal district, and you're going to have that time to submit the data, probably the same similar data that you submitted at the informal level. And you want to be sure, it's important to have your requested number, because after your evidence is given, you have to tell the appraisal review board what number you're seeking. And so you can present just market and equity or both. And you have the right to have the appraisal district go first, or you can pick to go first. But at the start of the hearing, you can make that choice. But when it is your turn to go, you have to have, in conclusion, you have to have an exact number that you're requesting.
The whole process sounds scary, and they're trying not to be intimidating, but anybody can do this. And that's the whole point of this presentation today is you can be your own advocate. Nobody knows your property better than you do.
Right.
A property owner knows all the problems that they have in their house. And if they were to put it on the market for sale, they know, well, it needs painting. I've got to patch these cracks in the walls. This door doesn't close, which might be an indicator of a foundation that's possibly settling. Nobody knows this better than the homeowner themselves. And you've got that conviction of knowing it. So forget all the mumbo jumbo of going through hearings and so forth. If you can just show up with pictures and talk, that's all it takes. It's not rocket science. So, there's steps to go through, but it's anybody can do this. I don't want to, emphasize that enough. That it sounds complicated, looks complicated, even with the sheet. We tried to encapsulate 6 different slides into one here to keep it all for easy reference. But it's not that hard, and most of the time, the appraisal district is friendly. They may politely disagree with you, right? But I would say the success rate is pretty high if you go down there and you give a concise and credible presentation on why you think the appraisal district's value is too high.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you'll get a chance to rebut. Each side gives a quick presentation. Each side has a rebuttal, and then the ARB issues their decision right there in front of you, and you'll get a written order. You do have arbitration options after that, litigation options, but the vast majority are settled either informally or formally at the ARB.
Fellas, just to make sure I understand this correctly, you submit your protest, you check all the 3 boxes we talked about earlier, and then you'll have a Zoom or a phone call or an in-person meeting where you get to speak informally to one of the employees of Bexar County Appraisal District. You sit down, you plead your case, you tell them, look, this is more or less what's happening, how I see the world, and then there's a little negotiation that happens, and then almost every time you walk out of there with some kind of discount offered, right? And then, if that doesn't work, then you go through this more formal process. But my takeaway from this slide is show up, right? Protest and show up, because if you don't protest, you don't show up, well, then you pay 100%, you don't get the discount.
That's correct.
Okay.
One of our recent legislative law changes, I think it was the last session. Many times you might be afraid to go to one of these formal hearings because maybe there were market sales that indicated the value should be even higher.
Right.
And so you were hesitant to protest because they may actually try to increase the value from above the notice value. Well, that law has changed. They can no longer do that. So your worst case scenario is you walk out with a no change in value. Whereas before, if you knew about those sales down the street, and you just wanted to ignore them. Well, guess what? They're not going to ignore them.
Right.
And so many times they would use that to attempt to increase the value even greater than that notice of appraised value. Or the appraiser review board would just take it upon their own to say, look, I've analyzed the evidence. These sales indicate that the value should be higher than what the appraisal district noticed, and then they render a higher value. That is off the table. So you go in there with the peace of mind that your worst case scenario is you get nothing and go home.
You basically have nothing to lose.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So aside from that, what else is new?
Well, as you can see, so some good things happened with this last legislative session. Number one, homesteads begin the day that you purchase a property and move in and occupy it as your primary residence. This doesn't apply to rental properties where it is not your homestead. But if you bought a property, just say in March, you qualify immediately from the day that you moved in March and can demonstrate to the appraisal district that this became your new residence. And they will prorate the value of that exemption for the remainder of the year. So
the cap doesn't go into effect until after you've had it for a full year.
Right.
And so for instance, you buy a house in November, you're going to get that homestead exemption right away, but you're not going to get the 10% cap protection until the following year.
Right?
Okay.
So now if you buy an existing house that the previous owner already had a homestead exemption, you just get to enjoy that exemption for the remainder of the year. Number two is for the first time ever, the Bexar County is offering a homestead exemption.
Excellent.
Following the lead of the city of San Antonio a couple of years ago. And they are now offering a $5,000 exemption amount. So again, what do we mean by $5,000? If a house is appraised at $100,000 for the Bexar County portion of their tax rate, they will tax you on a value of $95,000 as opposed to the $100,000 valuation. So another big one here is it's been voted on. I'm sorry, it's been passed. The bill was passed, but voters need to approve this in the Proposition 2 May 7th election, where the school district homestead exemption will increase from $25,000 to $40,000. That's got some meat to it. That is going to provide some real property tax savings to anybody with the homestead exemption.
Okay. What about historic districts?
Historic districts. Okay, that's something new as well. To where neighborhoods that might be designated historic districts or properties that are affected by some historical designation or recognition. Many times, for instance, the city of San Antonio or other bylaws or other restrictions may be placed on a property dictating what can and can't be done to rehabilitate a property or even provide simple repairs. Sometimes they won't let you do rehabilitation unless they meet certain criteria. Well, all this could have an impact on the market value of your property. So the appraisal district must take into consideration the effect that a property being located in a designated historic district may be somewhat encumbered by what they can or can't do to improve that property. Sometimes it is just entirely too costly to reproduce something that was built 100 years ago.
Sure.
And it's just not cost effective to do that. But nevertheless, if you were to turn around and sell a property in its present condition, that would most certainly have an effect on what you could sell that property for. So just something new, where as before, the appraisal district did not have to give any credence to claims. This is not new. People have been complaining about this for many, many years, but lawmakers finally heard and understood what was going on, and they passed a law to try to help property owners that might be affected by being located in a historic district.
Great. All right. Well, that kind of brings us to the last slide here, and I'm going to stop sharing the screen so I can look you guys in the eye and ask you some of the questions. I'm a lawyer, guys, and so whenever I tell my clients, we got to go to court, and we got to bring all our evidence. Some of them are shocked, right? They're like, wait, you mean the evidence isn't going to just be there waiting for us, right? And so I imagine that you guys give the same advice, and I heard you say it today, which is when you go into this informal meeting, bring your evidence with you, right? And so you mentioned photos. Would invoices help too, of like repairs that you had to do?
Yeah, invoices, estimates for repair. Like I said, anything that is current or after January 1st, it would be helpful for a reduction.
Right, you need to go loaded for bear, hunting for rabbit. That's what we tell them. Bring more information than you think is necessary. When we say bring it, the President District, I don't believe as of Friday, I don't think they were going to allow in-person informals. They're not even required to provide informal hearings. It's a smart thing to do, and they do that. But nevertheless, so this information must be submitted along with your protest through the online portal system. You can do it. It shouldn't be that hard. And if anybody has difficulty doing it, they can call the appraisal district, and they should help walk them through what that process looks like. But like you said, Councilman, you've got to be ready. You have a short amount of time to convey your message, your story. It's not an all-day thing. They're going to analyze whatever evidence you have and come to a conclusion, come to a decision on what their opinion is.
Well, so the message, to the folks watching is take this seriously. I mean, we're talking about your money, folks, and if you want to pay less, and money is important to you, well, then treat this, even though it's called an informal meeting, treat this with a certain degree of formality and give it the importance that it merits. Show up with more photos than less. Make sure to do all your research, get your comparables, because I imagine, gentlemen, that if you just walk in and say, hey, what's wrong with you, BCAD? You put too much salsa on the taco this year. That's not a good enough argument, right? I mean, you actually have to provide a basis for your objections, right?
Absolutely. You got to give them something to work with. Most of the time they do want to work with you, but you've got to give them something to work with. And you're right, just going in there with pure emotion isn't going to cut it. They're not going to, they may feel bad for you, but that's not going to win you any favor with your value.
Right. Now, what are some of the more common mistakes that you see people make? When they go in there on their own?
Well, it's important. A real common one I see a lot is a homeowner will take the price per square foot of their neighbors and just straight price per square foot. And it's important to make those adjustments for pools and size of land.
Or size of the structure. You can't compare a 4,000 square foot house with a 2,000 square foot house. There's adjustments that have to be made.
So the recommendation would be, if you're going to do that kind of analysis, you want to have similar size houses. You don't want to compare a 1-story versus a 2, simple things like that. But I've seen that pretty common, where a homeowner will just take all their neighbors and just compare price per square foot, not taking into account the adjustments.
Right. Staying within your neighborhood. President District likes to analyze values within a conforming neighborhood. You can't go from Crown Ridge to the Dominion. You've got, if you're in Crown Ridge, you need to use Crown Ridge sales. And even then, there's little subdivisions within Crown Ridge that they may want you to stay within as well. That's debatable. But anyway, those are some of the things that they're looking for, is your comp set, your comparable set, perhaps may not be the right set to bring.
Right, right. So let me give you a hypothetical, and you guys have talked about this with me in the past, but hailstorm flies through San Antonio, right? Or one of those horrible windstorms that we have. It does damage to your roof, and you call your insurance company, and they do the right thing, and they cover the damages, or they do the wrong thing and they tell you to pound sand and you're on your own. How would something like that impact the arguments I make at my informal or my formal protest meeting at the at BCAD, because mega storms are the new normal, guys, and so we're seeing so many folks impacted by that. Is there an interplay there between the storm claims and the storm damage and your housing?
I'll talk about the date. One of the most critical things is, when did it occur? When did the hailstorm come through? So if your roof was in perfect condition or good condition as of January 1, if you have this massive hailstorm on January the 2nd, can't use it. Okay. Because it's a snapshot date as of January 1. If your house burned down on January the 2nd, you still pay taxes for the full year based on January the 1st.
Okay.
However, a storm does come through at some point during the year, and if you don't make those repairs before the following January 1, so that condition still existed, and you can justify with roof estimates and so forth, insurance claims, as long as you didn't do the repair yet before that January 1, then you can use that damage as evidence to support a lower value.
Very
interesting. But again, the target date is, what was the condition of the house on January 1?
Okay.
And it's good to know that the district usually doesn't give you a dollar for dollar on damage. They usually give you a roughly 40–50% maybe. So if you have a $10,000 repair, they're not just going to take that and knock $10,000 off, but they will use that to get a reduction.
So if you get estimates, get more than one estimate if you can. So you can say, look, I'm not going to get this for any less than $8,000. $5,000 is ridiculous to me. I can't stand it when they do that kind of thing.
Right.
Because, but that's what they do.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I learned a lot. And I really appreciate you guys donating your time to your San Antonio neighbors by showing up and lending us some of your wisdom and expertise. If people want to get in touch with our friends over at SWBC, what they can do is they can go to the link that I've got up here on the video, or and email these gentlemen and their team. If y'all want to get in touch with your city council member, here's the link and here's the email, and you guys can let us know what's on your mind regarding this topic or any other topic. And then also, I do hope, ladies and gentlemen, that you feel like we gave you some value today. And I'd like to know what your ideas are and what your comments are and what your concerns are down in the comments below. We are always going to be responding to you, and we take your comments very seriously. And, I take those up to City Hall. But also, Gary and Jerry, do people need to hire professionals like you guys, to get this done? Or is the process made to where it's accessible to the homeowner?
Well, you definitely don't have to hire a professional. Like Gary said earlier, I mean, no one can speak about your house as the homeowner.
Right.
But if you don't have the time, and what agents are good for, like me and Gary, we're going to be able to develop our own grid. So we're going to have a lot of data that the homeowner may not have.
Okay.
And so that's a big advantage to using a firm like ours.
And if you're a small business, you guys also handle the small business end of these protests as well, right? And even big business.
Small business, large business, industrial. Yeah, we run the gamut.
All right. Well, I love you. I love SWBC. I love the team out at SWBC. And you guys are fantastic for giving us time. Have a great week, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.